So this is about color and contrast, and they mean very different things in different cultures and different countries. Have to be in context. Sometimes today we think pink is girls, blue is boys, for example. Other cultures have different ways, or the parties have different colors associated with them. In America, red and blue. In Britain, it's a whole bunch of more spectrum. In Germany as well. So if you use colors, you trigger certain associations depending on what culture that is. It's also very important to use the color with the contrast. That's easy to read, but you can see in the bottom there's a low visibility. A lot of people with color blindness wouldn't be able to see this, or complementary colors could be vibrating. If they're very close to each other, they create a sort of a psychedelic effect that was used here in those kind of psychedelic posters from the 70s. And if you put the text on a background that has a picture, there could be the texture could be interfering with the lines of the text. It's much harder to read, as you can see, as the one on the right. And when we use colors, I would advise you not to use 100% black. And personally, I also don't like 100% white, because there are so many colors that actually shadows aren't really black. They always have some other color in it. And I think it gives it more depth if you use a color that's a little off black. And the very dark black on the screen also looks just very, very deep on some screen. Quite often you have to use brand colors. Or you can make a mood board and actually explore what kind of colors you'd like to use for the atmosphere that you're setting. Like here's an example of the color board that I did for a website. Or the colors that you like to use for the right atmosphere. This one was a website that ended up being there. So these are the colors I picked from the mood board that I created here. So you can see that kind of warm Kodak chrome look, because it was a website for like an elderly doctor's couple. And I usually make 5 mood boards that are concept and composition, color, and typography and icons. These are the brand colors of some of the colors of some of the brands that you already recognize from just the color. So I started by picking one color out of that board. Also, I have to go back. I think it's always really hard to find that palette, but you should make one palette before you start the entire project, because otherwise you're going to switch back and forth the colors a lot of times, and it's going to save you a lot of work if you set it at the beginning of the build. You can still change them slightly, but you need to have sort of one approved color palette to build it out with. So I choose this system because it makes me decide for some of the reasons that I get into. I choose one color that looks good on a dark and on a white background, because both scenarios will happen. So this yellow was sort of the main tone that I set here. And I use a little bit of a shadowy offset from that also looks good on the white and the black, but you can see that it's actually different colors. When I go back here on the black, this color looks the same, but it's actually much darker than when it's on the white background. So here I have 2 more tones that I added to the palette that are sort of the shadow of it to give it more depth. Then I reverse the two, the very darkest background and the light background here, which is white in that case. And then I reverse those 2 other parts, so you could see those connecting. So my palette has grown to 5 colors by now. These slight offsets, you often need them in tables or in sidebars or certain other boxes that you need to differentiate. So if there's a slight difference, but you don't need to change the actual consistent type of that is very helpful to have colors that are kind of close to each other to give it a little bit more versatility to build stuff. You also need alert colors. Most of the time you need to have some red to say an error alert. Don't make that the brand color red, because you don't want to associate the brand with the red. And you need to have some kind of go ahead green, this is good to go kind of color. And like I said before, I'd like to bring in some more depth by adding a little bit of a color like a shadow to it. So I make a little bit offset darker colors of those alert colors as well. So now I have a palette of about 10 colors. And I ended up building with those 10 colors this website. And you can see how I used all of the different shades throughout. It's good to have these reasons to build the palette, because it can get very confusing to find colors. So this is a good book to look up the meaning and traditions of how colors were used, so you can sort of justify your decisions. On Dribbble you can find good palettes, because you can save it, like each Dribbble board has a little color palette that you can actually save out. And you need to sort of develop the colors that you like for yourself. I think it's important as a designer to get into like why you like certain colors more than others. It's also really important to look at how they are with each other. A color is always defined by the other color that it sits onto.